and welcome to the DSR Daily. I'm David Rothkopf, joined as usual by Riley Fessler. How are you, Riley?
Not too bad.
And Minna Stein. How are you, Minna?
I'm looking forward to a new week.
Yes, I'm sorry I wasn't here much of last week. I was traveling around. Some of you may have thought that in the wake of the election, I had left the country. That's not true, contrary to what you might believe. We're here. We're here for the long haul. And I think what has happened makes the work we do that much more important, and we will try to do it even better going forward. Minna, you've got the first story. What do you have to say?
President Joe Biden has authorized Ukraine to use long-range U.S. weapons in Russia's Kursk region, where Russia has stationed 50,000 troops to counter Ukrainian forces. The decision comes amid concerns over the deployment of North Korean troops to support Russia, raising fears of escalating the conflict. Biden's shift in policy follows previous hesitations due to missile stockpiles and range limitations, but aims to help Ukraine retain Kursk as a strategic asset. The U.S. is also planning long-term security aid to Ukraine with an eye on potential shifts in U.S. leadership and foreign policy.
Yeah, too little, too late. We shall see. Too late, no question about it. Should they have done this from the outset? They absolutely should. In fact, I think it's fair to ask the question, what if they had done this from the outset? What if they had given the Ukrainians more ability to use more weapons sooner? I know people in the administration would argue it wouldn't have made much of a difference. But we are left to wonder because we know that there's about 2 months more of intensive support for Ukraine, and then it's going to change. The Ukrainians know it, the Russians know it. It changes the complexion of the entire undertaking. And, yes, by all means, let them do this. Give them all the money that's been authorized. Give it to them now. Don't make them wait because it's not going to get to them in the future. Do everything we can to increase the leverage of the Ukrainians. But having said that, if the U.S. administration pulls the plug shortly into the Trump term and shortly thereafter says, let's negotiate a peace, and says, we do not believe Ukraine should retain any of its former lands. We do not believe Ukraine should end up in NATO. We do not believe Ukraine should end up in the EU. Ukraine needs to have a big buffer zone to protect Russia from Ukrainian aggression, which of course is ludicrous, but the Russians are asking for it. Then the U.S. is going to be in a very strong position to impose or to try to impose upon the Ukrainian terms that will not only make them less safe and reward Vladimir Putin for his aggression, but it'll make all of Europe and the United States less safe. And I think we need to see that for what it is. Next up, Riley.
During a historic visit to Brazil, President Biden pledged new financial aid to protect the Amazon rainforest, emphasizing its critical role in combating climate change. After an aerial tour of the vast ecosystem, Biden declared November 17th as International Conservation Day and committed U.S. funds to reforestation, biodiversity, and sustainable agriculture in the Amazon. His initiatives aim to curb deforestation and preserve the rainforest's ability to regulate the global climate, but faces uncertainty as President-elect Trump, who opposes climate agreements, prepares to take office. While Biden acknowledged the challenges ahead, he expressed confidence in the irreversible momentum of the clean energy movement and the global economic opportunities it offers.
First of all, I thought you were saying it was Global Consternation Day, which, given the appearance of Biden standing there at the edge of the rainforest and then turning and looking like he was sort of just wandering off into the rainforest.
It was a striking image, to be sure.
It was a I don't know who thought that one through, but it was a really weird image. But of course, this is a good thing. And while he was doing this, what was Donald Trump doing? He was picking a guy to run the Department of Energy who's got a couple of $1 billion company that's focused on the fracking industry and who has actively said he does not believe that we have a climate crisis or that it is an overstated crisis. Man-made climate change is overstated. That's, political position. Trump was elected president of the United States, and he said that was his position. So I don't think anybody should be surprised. But having said that, it is contrary to the established science, and it is dangerous for the world. How much damage can they do in a couple of years against cumulative damage that's been done over the past, century and a half? Well, I don't know. But certainly if it's the kind of thing that concerns you and you want to change the position of the United States on these things, you've got to have your eye on the midterm elections in 2026. Sorry to mention the midterm elections 2 weeks after the last one, but that's where we are. Minute.
Pete Hegseth, the former Fox News host and President-elect Donald Trump's candidate for defense secretary, has paid an undisclosed amount to a woman who accused him of sexual assault in 2017. Hegseth's attorney confirmed the payment as part of a civil settlement, but maintains that the encounter was consensual and denies the assault allegations. The accusation was brought to light through a memo to the Trump transition team. Authorities investigated the matter in 2017 but did not pursue charges. And Hegseth now faces a Senate confirmation process, with some senators expressing support while others await further review of the allegations.
Yeah, I think some of the reactions I've seen on the social media have been overstated. It's absolutely untrue that every member of the Trump cabinet has been a sex offender. They're all white. They're all, most of them are male. There are a couple of women, but they're not all sex offenders. Just the president, the Secretary of Defense nominee, and the Attorney General nominee so far as we know. But I have to say, as bad as this is, and it should be disqualifying for Hegseth, it would have been I was in the government when people were not getting these jobs because they failed to pay taxes on their nanny salaries or, people who were doing their lawn salaries. So we've come a long way since then. But I do think the bigger issue here, and the issue that Republican senators who are now in the majority need to keep in mind, is that the U.S. Department of Defense is not only probably the most consequential organization on earth, it's also the largest. And putting somebody in charge of that organization who's never been in charge of any organization is a problem. Putting somebody in charge of the Defense Department who's never had any defense policy experience, that's a problem. Putting somebody in charge of a huge, diverse organization who has said that women don't belong in combat and who sports white supremacist tattoos, that's a problem. So, there are many, many grounds on which a guy like Hegseth would never have been considered before, and certainly should not be considered now. I think the most relevant story with regard to this was something I saw on social media, which is a report that Mitch McConnell has said there will be no recess appointments. And of course, McConnell controls the Senate until January, at which point there's a handover. And this could provide Thune and other members of the Senate with cover to retain the advice and consent role that the Senate has. That role, by the way, is granted to the Senate not by each incoming president. It's granted to the Senate by the Constitution. It's the kind of thing we preserve and have preserved for a couple of hundred years. And it should not be dispatched without some thought, or, by the way, ever. Riley?
President-elect Donald Trump has named Brendan Carr, a Republican FCC commissioner and vocal critic of the Biden administration's telecom policies, as chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. Carr, known for his opposition to net neutrality, broadband subsidy programs, and big tech censorship, has also advocated for loosening media ownership rules and taking a tougher stance against Chinese telecom companies. However, Carr's critics, including Democratic Senator Ed Markey, argue his positions could undermine free expression and politicize the FCC.
But
The FCC.
I don't understand. However, what was the however? You mean in addition?
I guess some people could almost look at those previous things as being good. I certainly wouldn't.
No, this guy. This is the guy, in case you don't follow the FCC personally very closely. You may recall that Kamala Harris, you remember her, appeared on Saturday Night Live shortly before the election, and that somebody in the FCC said NBC should lose its license to broadcast as a result. It was this guy. I think that's the kind of thing that wins the attention of Trump. And I think it's the kind of thing that people who are trying to anticipate what the Trump administration is going to do should see as a clear signal that the Trump administration is going to be the government Trump promised it would be. Now, he won. I might add, this is the reality of the system that we live in. And so, we have to work within that system if we don't agree with it. But I would point out one other piece of news that's become clear over the course of the past weekend. Donald Trump did not win a majority of the votes. He is at just under 50% of the votes in this last election. Which means that Donald Trump has been the dominant figure in American politics, and he has never been supported by the majority of Americans. Not in any of his 3 presidential elections, not in any opinion poll that's ever been taken. He has always been a minority president, which is ironic given his views on minorities, generally speaking. The other thing that came out over the course of the weekend was that Kamala Harris lost this election, and I'm talking to you, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, by a total of just under 250,000 votes in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. If you hadn't voted for a third party, if you'd gotten up off your butt and voted, if you'd taken somebody with you to vote who could have voted but didn't have a way to get to the poll, could easily have gone another way. But please, when somebody tells you Donald Trump has won a mandate, he hasn't. He's not supported by the majority. He just barely eked out an election victory. He has won fair and square, at least as far as we know. And we have to live with that. And we here will evaluate the decisions of this administration in the context of policy, because we're about policy, and we will have bipartisan discussions about whether it's a good idea or it's a bad idea to pursue these policies. And we will try to present fact-based, rational discussions of these things, because I still am old-fashioned enough to think that that'll make a difference. But if we're going to start with the facts, let's start with the facts about the election. Is that it? Is that our last story?
We have one more.
Oh, okay. Some good news, something about pandas or puppy dogs.
Of course. You know the news cycle these days. It's all positive.
Look, I know that we talked last week, and Riley walks by the National Zoo every day, and they have a little calendar out in front that says how many days till the pandas are open to the public. And he's just waiting to go in there and sort of sleep outside the panda cage for the next 4 years, I think.
January 24th. Don't forget. Mark your calendar.
We're all finding ways to get through this together, and that's Riley. And Riley will lead a little DSR group of tours of the panda cage. If you would like Riley to go with you to the panda cage on January 24th, just DM us or text us, and I know Riley will be happy to do that.
Listen, I was a trained docent at the Smithsonian, so I could give tours of the pandas.
And there is no greater panda expert.
Subscribe to DSR now and get a free trip with Riley to the panda cage on January 24th. Riley is just like, I volunteered for what? Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
You had me up until the day of, because fighting through the teeming
I
hordes
know.
of people sounds like personal hell, but that's okay.
I can't even imagine how crazy it's going to be. Sadly, our last story is not about pandas. Vivek Ramaswamy, a biotech entrepreneur and proposed head of President-elect Donald Trump's Department of...
Co-head.
Oh, excuse me. Yes. Co-head of President-elect Donald Trump's Department of Government Efficiency.
So-called Department of Government Efficiency, because it's not actually a department. The Congress has to make something a department. So you can't... Okay, go on. Sorry.
Okay. Alleged Department of Government Efficiency has promised major cuts to government agencies, including the complete elimination of some, alongside tech billionaire co-proposed leader Elon Musk. Ramaswamy said on Fox News that they aim to reduce the size of the federal government by slashing agencies and cutting federal contractors who overcharge. He argued that the U.S. has too many civil servants, suggesting that a bloated government is undemocratic and needs significant reform. While the alleged Department of Government Efficiency is expected to be an advisory panel, Ramaswamy intends to implement changes quickly with a goal to finish work by July 4th, 2026, and to set a new example for government efficiency.
Be so cool if Ramaswamy had actually read the Constitution of the United States and understood that budget decisions are left to the fill in the blank folks. Go on, say it. You could say it, Vinna.
Oh, it's Congress.
The Congress, exactly. So the executive branch doesn't get to determine what gets spent. But having said that, their desire to cut $2 trillion would cause what? Let's fill in the blank. What would that do to the U.S. economy?
Nothing good.
A national depression. That's right. Taking $2 trillion out of the economy would be a very bad thing. Also, what would it do to the districts of Republicans who depend far more than Democrats on federal funding? Anybody, any answers?
Yeah, they would definitely suffer the most.
They would suffer the most. That's right. And so they probably wouldn't vote for it. Also, do you think that Ramaswamy is going to cut subsidies that go to Musk? Probably not. Is he going to cut the defense budget? Nope. That's the biggest chunk of the budget with entitlements. Now, Ramaswamy has said, look, you just cut entitlements by getting, half the people off the rolls. There's a problem with that, which is at least as the system in our country is currently set up, people go to the polls every couple of years. And if they kick a bunch of people off of Social Security or Medicare who've been paying in their whole lives, they will lose the next election by 100% to zero. So that's not going to happen. Will they cut some things that be damaging to the country? Yeah, they'll recommend it. The Congress will go along with it. Will it be anything on the scale that they've talked about? No. But obviously, we've got to watch this closely. Should the government budget be cut? Yes, it should be. Or it should be balanced by collecting more taxes from those who can afford to pay for it. But there's plenty of waste in the United States government. Should we be cutting the Department of Education in a country where, we're locked in global competition with other countries that are investing more and more in education? Probably not. That's probably a national security issue. But I think this will end in tears, and I think both Ramaswamy and Musk will be scaramuccied out of this whole thing sometime soon, particularly when they find out whatever Musk did with the body of J.D. Vance. Has anybody seen J.D. Vance since the election?
That's such a good question. I was thinking that this weekend.
Yeah, it's like he's nowhere to be seen. Meanwhile, Musk is next to Trump at all times. I mean, at this point, if Melania were physically interested in Trump, she would be jealous. She's not. She's probably relieved. But it's very strange to see, the world's richest man having, it's his favorite thing. It's like he just bought a new Ferrari. What did he buy? A government. Oh my gosh, I have a president right here. He's my own sock puppet. I can do whatever I want with him. But soon Trump will tire of this and find it irritating. Soon they will have a divergence on some issue, and we know how that ends. We'll cover that here, objectively, fact-based, expert-based, as we do everything here at the DSR Network. By the way, I have totally ditched X, Twitter. I'm like off it. I deactivated my account. It was hard. I want some sympathy here. I had 300,000 followers on Twitter that I'd built over 12 years. It was kind of an asset that I had really invested a lot in. But it became intolerable. And also the idea of of providing content that supported Elon Musk as he was doing what he was doing, I just didn't feel was good. So I've switched over to Blue Sky. And if you are on Blue Sky and you want to follow me, please do. And Substack, and that's where I'm going to spend my time. We'll still promote our shows on Twitter. But if you want to reach me, Blue Sky and Substack are the places to do it. And we'll do more and more on those sites. In any event, here we are. It's November 18th. It's Thanksgiving next week. We will get you all in the Thanksgiving mood. And remember, if you want to go see the Pandas with Riley, just text, just email, just DM, get into our Slack, somewhere, hop into our messages. Riley will be there. He'll make a list. He'll meet you in front with a little flag that says Deep State on it, which should frankly, on January 24th, possibly could get him thrown in jail. But we'll see.
I'll sacrifice my life and limb for Deep State Radio.
Deep State Panda tours could be a big thing, and could be, frankly, I think a great reason to give a gift subscription to Deep State Radio. Don't you, Minna?
Agree.
You're going to give out some. You're going to think about giving this to some friends.
Everyone in my family will have it.
Happy holidays, folks. Mm-hmm. Happy Hanukkah. I've long felt Hanukkah needs like a creature like Santa Claus or something, and I've always said it was a chicken.
Maybe it should be a panda.
But it should be a panda. I've always said it was a chicken because Hanukkah could be Hanukkah. So I would say to my kids, it's the Hanukkah chicken.
It's a good bit.
Yeah, it was dad humor is my role here, right? But I think the Hanukkah panda is real good, and we can then also use it for other holidays. Anyway, we'll work the bugs out of this one, but please, tell us on Blue Sky how you like the idea of Riley Panda Tours, and we'll be seeing you again tomorrow. Till then, bye.